Have you ever felt like a place was wrong? Not just empty or abandoned, but alive, watching, waiting. I used to laugh at ghost stories, at urban legends about cursed places, but not anymore. Not after what happened to me, to my family. This is the story of a pit that became a portal to something unspeakable. And I warn you, if you ever buy an apartment in a new building, especially near an abandoned construction site, find out what was there before. Because some places hide secrets that should never be disturbed. The construction site was frozen when the development company went bankrupt, leaving behind a giant, festering wound on the earth. The pit quickly filled with murky, stagnant water, overgrown with reeds and, of course, surrounded by terrifying rumors. They said that an abandoned military hospital once stood there, demolished in the 90s. Old-timers whispered that during the demolition, workers found horrifying things in the basements. Rusty surgical tools, yellowed human bones, and decayed personal belongings, all reeking of death and formaldehyde. Rumor had it that they didn't even bother to remove the remains, just dumped everything into the pit and covered it with concrete. A typical urban legend, you might say. I thought so too, until it wasn't. A year after we moved in, my parents suddenly divorced. My father, John, a construction engineer with 30 years of experience, had been against buying this apartment from the start. He immediately noticed the cracks spreading like spider webs across the walls, the dark patches of toxic mold creeping from the corners, and the bizarre, illogical layout with inexplicable niches and protrusions that weren't in the blueprints. It was as if the building had been designed not by an architect, but by a madman in the throes of a fever dream. This place, it's wrong, he said, his voice low and uneasy as he inspected the apartment for the first time. His eyes darted across the walls as if he could see something we couldn't. There's something here. I can feel it. But my mother, Linda, insisted. The price was too good to pass up. It's just settling cracks, she said dismissively. All new buildings have them. It'll be fine. After the divorce, she moved in with her new boyfriend, leaving me, my father, and my younger brother Alex in this cursed place. The first real sign came on a cold November night. I woke up thirsty and stumbled to the kitchen in the dark, trying not to wake anyone. As I reached for a glass, I heard it, a heavy, labored breathing, followed by the sound of footsteps running from the kitchen to the far corner of the living room. The steps were loud, like a large man running in panic. My heart raced as I froze in place. I flipped the light switch, but the room was empty. The door was locked, the windows shut. My father and brother were asleep. I told myself it was my imagination, but the fear had already taken root. The second incident was different. It was February, and a blizzard howled outside. Around midnight, I woke up with a strange sensation. Someone was sitting on the edge of my bed. I felt the mattress dip under their weight, but in the pitch darkness, I couldn't see anything. Then the smell hit me, a nauseating mix of damp earth, mold, and formaldehyde. It grew stronger with every second, filling my nostrils, choking me. I couldn't move, not even a finger. My body was paralyzed, but my eyes could still see. And then I saw it. A hunched figure in a tattered medical coat, silhouetted against the faint light from the window. It didn't move. It just sat there, staring at me. Then the bed began to shake. At first, it was subtle, but the vibrations grew stronger until my teeth chattered uncontrollably. I tried to scream, but only a hoarse gasp escaped my throat. Just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The figure vanished, the smell disappeared, and I could move again. On the floor, I found wet footprints leading from my bed to the wall. They dried within minutes. I tried to convince myself it was sleep paralysis. But in March, something happened that shattered any hope of rational explanation. I was returning home late one night. A freezing rain mixed with snow fell from the sky. As I parked near the pit, I heard someone call my name, Emily. The voice was gurgling like someone drowning. I turned on my phone's flashlight and aimed it at the water. What I saw was impossible. Floating on the surface was a face, pale, with sunken dead eyes and cracked blue lips. It stared at me, its mouth moving. Emily, help. It's so cold. I dropped my phone and ran, slipping in the mud, falling, scrambling to my feet, and running again. I don't even remember how I got home. When my father came home from work, he found me huddled in the farthest corner of the room, shaking like a leaf. My clothes were soaked from the rain and mud, and my face was as pale as a ghost's. He didn't ask questions, just made me a cup of hot tea, wrapped me in a blanket, and sat beside me, waiting patiently until I could speak. Dad, I saw a face, I finally whispered, my voice trembling. It was in the water. It spoke to me. He listened in silence, his face unreadable. When I finished, he simply nodded and said, "I'll check it out in the morning." The next day, he went to the pit. I stayed home, too terrified to even look out the window in that direction. He returned a few hours later, his expression grim. "There's nothing there, Emily," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Just your broken phone, some concrete, rusty rebar, and muddy water. No footprints, no faces." I knew he didn't believe me. Or maybe he didn't want to believe me, but I couldn't stay in that apartment any longer. A few days later, I rented a small room on the other side of town, as far away from that cursed place as I could get. I thought it was over, that I could start a new life, forget about all of it. But I was wrong. A few days after I moved out, my brother called. His voice was shaking, breaking, like he was barely holding back tears. "Emily, it's Dad. They took him to a psychiatric hospital," he said, and the pain in his voice made my heart sink. Apparently, Dad had gone to work the day before and never came home. He didn't answer his phone, didn't show up at his job. Early the next morning, some passers-by found him at the pit. He was standing knee-deep in the icy water, clutching a rusted piece of rebar and talking to someone no one else could see. His eyes were wide with terror, his lips moving as he muttered words no one could understand. When they tried to pull him out, He fought back, screaming, "They're here! They want to take me! They want to be warm!" They took him to the hospital, where he was diagnosed with acute schizophrenia, but I knew it wasn't just a mental illness. It was something else, something that lived in the pit. I wish I could say this was all in my head, but I know it wasn't. And I beg you, be careful. Some places, they don't forgive intrusion.